Previously on Popping Collars.
That was like a real Mr. Smith Goes to Washington moment, though. The thing that I always love about pop culture and politics is that you're one stirring speech away from changing policy in the country, and it never that's not how it works, right?
That's the Aaron Sorkin fallacy.
Yeah, it's the American president, right? All of a sudden I'm going to convince everyone of my rightness.
It worked in Independence Day.
Well, now that was a compelling speech.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, Mr. Rogers, sure, but come on, Bill Pullman?
Welcome to Popping Collars, the podcast that loiters at the intersection of religion and pop culture. My name is Ricardo Avila, rector at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Los Gatos, California. With me is my co-host, Betsy Gonzalez. Betsy, where are you and what's going on?
Summertime and the living is easy here in the great city of Alexandria in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I serve here as the head chaplain at Episcopal High School, and we are still on summer break and savoring every last drop.
Also with us is our co-host, Liz Easton. Liz, what is happening in your world?
Hey, Ricardo. I'm in Nebraska, where I serve as the canon to the ordinary for the Diocese of Nebraska. And I was at summer camp all last week. Church camp. It was intense. It was 100 kids, 4th through 12th grade. We had beautiful weather. It was awesome.
Today's special guest is a first-timer to the Popping Collars universe, Graham Dobson. Graham, tell us who you are.
Hi, Graham Dobson. I'm in San Francisco, California. I work for the city, and I help fund preschool in San Francisco. So I used to be a preschool teacher, and now I give money to programs that do that. Yeah. I've always wanted to be a special guest star.
Just like Heather Locklear on Melrose Place.
It will fit in with my theme around 70s TV shows.
Excellent.
They always had special guest stars, yeah.
This is episode 88 of Popping Collars, and today's topic is perhaps a bit more footloose and fancy-free than usual. Travel and pop culture. Of course, summer is travel season for many, hence the timeliness, perhaps, of the topic. Unless you were a jet-setting toddler or child, your first glimpses of foreign countries and far-off lands were probably through pop culture. Movies, books, television shows, and even music. From Mary Poppins to Downton Abbey, you came to long for London and British culture. Hemingway or Baldwin may have made you pine for Paris. Or maybe watching Game of Thrones brought cravings for Croatia. Whatever sparked your imagination by revealing foreign landscapes, pop culture has influenced your sense of the world and urged you on to travel that may have changed your life. Proust once wrote, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes." So let's start there with this question. What in pop culture has given you new eyes and a desire to visit other lands?
Well, I could probably talk for the next hour about this, but I feel like my whole life was based on my exposure to pop culture and where it took me. I'm British. I'm from the UK. I've lived in America for 30 years. As early as I remember, I was drawn to all things American for some reason. It was so different to where I grew up. I grew up in Newcastle in the northeast of England in the 60s and 70s. And America was just so exciting to me. Whether it was comics, whether it was TV, whether it was movies that I watched, it was all things American. I just couldn't wait to go there. It was like the promised land at that time for me. It was everything. All my favorite things were American.
What examples?
Oh my God! Well, this is so. Honestly, if people ask me why did you come to America to live, I'll say Charlie Brown and Mary Tyler Moore, and maybe Charlie's Angels. But it was like Peanuts cartoons. introduced me to all this American stuff. It was a cartoon, but they played baseball and they went to summer camp and they did Halloween things. And then they had Thanksgiving. And it was all this stuff that we didn't have in the UK. So I was learning all this stuff about America through Charlie Brown and Linus and Lucy. And it was just, that was my first sort of introduction to America.
I've maybe had the opposite experience of some people, that in that I've always been very interested in learning more about the place where I am. When I moved to Nebraska, I read every book I could possibly find about Nebraska and, listened to the music and watched the movies. So I think that I'm always interested in kind of drilling down into the place where I am.
I think long term, I brought them up earlier. U2's music got me into Irish history, that got me into going to Ireland twice, and that, and it's my own family's history. And so like that sort of delve in, right? So I like to take kind of like what Liz does to kind of take the deep dive at home. Like I'll dive in through somebody else's perspective and kind of dig in that way, right? Like I love a good character driven, under the Tuscan sun, and then it's like, oh, hello. Or like before sunrise. And you're like, oh, yeah. Budapest. Okay, great. Like those sorts of things. And just when the place is that other character in the romance or show, I enjoy that because I just like the vision that the director is creating, really kind of placing this in a particular location for a particular reason.
I went to see the movie Reds when I was 15 or 16 with Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton, and it was this big historical epic about the Russian Revolution and John Reed, the American journalist, and it was Warren Beatty and all his handsome, 40s-ish glory. I had no concept of a world outside of Milwaukee and Chicago, hardly, and it blew my mind. It's like, what are communists? What is Russia? What is Greenwich Village? And who is Emma Goldman and all these other revolutionaries, and that led me to reading Dostoevsky because of Russian literature. And when I applied for college, you had to write an essay, and I literally wrote about how Reds opened up my world and how I wanted to explore more from having been exposed to that. And I took Russian Lit in translation my first year in college. So Russia, of all places, was a big thing because of Warren Beatty's Reds.
I think one of the things of growing up in the UK and being in Europe and having that kind of access to all those different countries was that, I traveled a lot when I was a student at college and from, right from an early age. So I did the typical thing and took the Euro rail and went all around Europe when I was a student and went, it's like 24 countries in 2 weeks or whatever it was. It was like, if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium kind of thing. When I moved to the States, at the end of that trip, I took a Greyhound bus and rode the Greyhound around all of America for 2 months. And sort of traveled from city to city overnight on the Greyhound, and then would spend a day in whatever city I ended up in, and then get on the Greyhound again, and then would go to the next place. I did have a few places where I stopped for several nights, but on the whole, I was mostly washing in public Greyhound station bathrooms and meeting people on the bus and wait until the very last bus to get to the next city, at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was, of course, I was 20. I was 19, so I could do that and sleep on a bus. You
could only do that at 19. It sounds like you had the movie pass of Greyhound. Like
it was totally like that.
You used to be able to do that. I don't know if you still can. You used to be able to do that.
That was 1980. It was crazy. I was like a young thing, and it just felt like that. It was a thing I could do, and I did it, and it was amazing. And the people you meet on the bus, and the people that you sit next to, and you get into these incredible conversations, and scary situations, and stupid situations, and you're too young to even know better at that stage. So it was an amazing. I look back on that, and it seems like that happened to another person. I can't even imagine even washing my face in a Greyhound bus station now. Never mind my hair or my body. It was ridiculous. Traveling by yourself and going away like that, and just relying on you and not other people. That's the way you get to meet people. That's the way you get to have those conversations. That's the way you get to do things that you would never do otherwise, because you don't fall back on the people that you're with, or only talking in English, or not making those efforts to really get to meet people and And I had I met so many people during those trips that I would, and then spent time with them and traveled for days afterwards with them. And we'd then travel together for a month, or I stayed with a family that I met in a certain place. Or I can't even imagine going away for 6 months by myself now. It would be so different.
Well, I do. Some of this is making me think about mission trips, about church mission trips, which I have a very ambivalent relationship with. And honestly, my sort of current beliefs about mission can be rather controversial. So I'll kind of leave those at the door. But for some people, it is a way of recreating that footloose, young, scrappy travel as privileged adults. And it's hard to get people to see through, like, are you going to be here as a tourist of another country's poverty or war, or are you going to be here to do something else? And what else can you actually do?
When I went to college, I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I went as a working class kid of immigrant parents, and many of the friends I wound up having were middle class or upper middle class folks who had traveled around the world and worked on kibbutzes and, just been everywhere. And so I got it in my mind, and more than pop culture, that's what made me think, I need to travel. I want to be like these folks. I don't want to be kind of the working class kid who doesn't see the world. And so it took me a while before I could have enough money to do that, but it was a big priority. And one of the first things I did was I moved to Prague in 1991 with the intention of teaching English, because that was the hot place to go then, at least on our campus. It was the Iceland of 1991, if you will.
Everybody's going to Iceland. I don't know. I don't know whether it's in your Facebook feed, good listener, but all of my friends are going to Iceland. What's the deal? All right, go record.
Totally. And so I saved up as much, all the money I could over a year and a half, and I finally bought a ticket and I went there, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. The woman who said she would be my contact person, it fell through disastrously. I was there like 2 nights, and she said, I really need my space and I need you to move out. And she didn't help me find a job at her school. She's like, well, just go to the school and ask around. And it failed miserably. And I'd never been anywhere except to visit family in Mexico with my family. So I was out there and I was depressed because I wasn't making it happen and I didn't know what to do. And I was so humiliated. And so I met this youth hostel.
Did you meet Graham at the youth hostel? No?
I might have, actually.
You might have.
No, I was sleeping on the train.
Oh, you were. Sorry, you were on the. Graham didn't need a bed. I'm sorry.
I don't need a bed.
That's right. He was young.
Oh, that's just Southties sleeping beds.
So I go to this youth hostel, and I met a few people, and we traveled a little bit together. But I remember one night, one guy pulls out a guitar, and we all just kind of started singing songs, and they knew some English songs, and they sang "Imagine" by John Lennon, and then they started playing. They're like, "Oh, do you know this song?" And they started playing "Take Me Home, Country Roads" by John Denver. And I started singing it. I started
You burst into tears. Yeah.
I did.
No,
it was so embarrassing. I mean, come on, these foreigners. I'm like, take me home, country road.
Slight accent, and then
and they're like, oh, what's wrong? I'm miserable.
While we've been talking, I've also thought about a travel book I really like that's been mentioned on this show before, and it's that book Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Jesus' best friend. And, that was well researched, and that filling the gap between age 13 in the Bible and 30 for Jesus. Yeah. And it's a journey to go find the wise men in their foreign destinations, where they are. I mean, it's a total travel log book of let's go see what the Himalayas are like, and let's go to India, and let's go to these places, because in seeking and in traveling, you then start to see the influence on Jesus's ministry when he returns. And then begins his couch surfing all over all over the ancient Middle East, and staying with people, and who he runs into at the well, and who he meets along the way, and these stories that get saved from that, and particularly like weird stuff that happens when he gets out of bounds, like the Syrophoenician woman. Like weird stuff happens to him when he gets like just outside the borders, just outside the boundaries of Israel, and then comes back.
I was thinking about Jesus when we were talking too, because in a way, like the Gospels are a travel log. I mean, he's on the move, but also he's sticking pretty close to home. Like, he's not in Nazareth anymore, but he's still in the same
cliff and the running off the cliff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing good can come from here.
Sorry.
But, so he's on the move, so that's something. But also he is kind of digging down into his place and his people more broadly. It's kind of both.
You know, we started out with the question of how did pop culture influence your travel or changed your life or made you think of other places. When you think about a pilgrimage, right, you have a sacred intention that causes you to go from one place to another, probably not knowing what will become of you, but trying to be open to the experience and some sort of transformation. Is there anything that you've done in your travel life or even in your relocation to another place like Liz to Omaha that has been that has felt like pilgrimage to you?
Well, I travel constantly in my ministry, but I travel within the same 80,000 square miles, or so in Nebraska. And it has completely framed the way that I think of my life as a Christian and my ministry, this idea of being in motion and kind of being on the road and traveling lightly. And the parts of the gospel where Jesus sends out the disciples, I travel with my bishop. So there is a sense of being sent out 2 by 2, like that really, it feels like we're 2 disciples, like on this journey together. But every time in that reading, when Jesus says, you will take no purse, and like, I love a good purse. I have not figured
Nice clutch. It's crossbody.
Yeah. Jesus said you can take a clutch, but not a big purse.
Like, I constantly overpack. That feels like a spiritual thing. Like, I need to learn how to let go. That when Jesus says, eat whatever is put before you. And I'm all like, how much fat is in that potato casserole? Like, you can't, you have to, there's something.
Yum.
Right there, Jesus is really inviting us to live lightly as disciples, and to me there is a travel aspect of that, not a tourist aspect, but a kind of going where you're called and being there with integrity and being fully present wherever you are, not being tied to objects or stability or whatever it is, and being completely dependent on the hospitality of others.
I'm thinking about Paris. William and I have been to Paris twice, and I've always wanted to see it. It's like the place I've most wanted to see in my life, maybe after like London. We went, and I had taken art history in college, and I knew about the post-impressionists and the impressionists and Monet and all of that. And going to those museums, the Musée d'Orsay and the Louvre and the l'Orangerie or whatever the heck it's called, and seeing that art and remembering my college days when I just thought, this is a whole world I know nothing about. It's the late 1800s. It's all these artists that came together and started seeing the world in this kind of pointillist or abstract or impressionistic way. There's a resonance. I don't want to call it religious because I don't want to sort of be too broad with that term, but it felt kind of sacred to go to these museums and see this artwork that I had seen for years and years and be in the places where these people were and to feel that kind of resonance through time, I guess. Not that I was going to go out and paint anything, but that I don't know, like for some people, Paris is you go to the nightclubs and dance all night long or you drink and all of that. But for me, it's the museums and the churches and a little bit the food, but just remembering where people walked. This is Hemingway drank at this cafe, and you kind of, it's weird, but it works for me. It's like he did. I'm gonna have a coffee here. I'm gonna have a cafe latte, and Hemingway sat at that table over there, and somehow it makes my life feel fuller. And maybe that's sort of the gift of culture.
So when I was traveling around the country on the Greyhound, and I went to New York City, which was like the ultimate, was to be in New York. And this was 1970, this was 1980. So it was right at the end, right the 70s in New York and gritty. And I remember walking around the city all day and ending up in Times Square, near Times Square, around, in the early hours of the morning. I didn't have a place to stay in New York. I was going to sleep at Port Authority bus station.
Ooh.
And so And the place that I wanted to go to and see most of all was Studio 54.
I've been waiting till we come to this moment. Go, Graham.
Obviously not to go in, because I was 18 and couldn't go in there anyway. Of course, I couldn't afford to, and they wouldn't have let me in. But I remember going there and just standing outside. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Studio 54. Warhol goes there. Grace Jones goes there. Liza Minnelli. I'm like, this was like, it was the place that I was most excited about seeing in New York was Studio 54. And I stood outside for a while just to see who was going in and what was going on. And this is no lie, but that night, some guy in like shorts and roller skated by me on the streets at like 1:00 in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like everything I thought New York was going to be.
He was just covered in glitter. He was just shining under those streetlights.
It was just really, I don't know. That was I know that pilgrimage is a stretch,
yes, but
like that was the culmination of my day in New York was to go to Studio 54 and just look at it. Yeah. And then I went and slept at the Port Authority.
Yeah, Graham, I have stood outside a closed Slane Castle in Ireland because that's where you two recorded Unbreakable Fire. And so it was not open. There was no roller skating. There was nothing cool happening. I just remember it was not open to the public, but I just needed to go
to be there,
to stand in the presence.
And pay homage.
Where they broke the bowl in that room on that album, whatever, Yeah. There are those places, those swoon-worthy kind of places where you kind of just to be there. And I think for me, when I think about travel FOMO now, the fact that I've never been to Israel. I've never been. Haven't gone. Have you gone, Ricardo?
But I want to go.
Have you gone, Graham?
Yes, I've been here.
Okay, have you gone, Liz?
No, and I'm not particularly interested.
Okay, fine. I'm not even talking to you anymore. But
you don't like Jesus, Liz?
I love Jesus. I can't explain why I don't have this thing that you all have.
All right, I'm really glad we've established this. It's taken many 88 episodes. Whatever. No, I feel, I don't know, I really, and maybe Liz, some of it is ambivalence. I want to go. All the travel there feels like it has an agenda of some variety.
Yeah, that's partly why
I think is some of my issue. But, one of my favorite documentaries that I like to show my biblical studies kids, my sophomores who are kind of in that concrete thinking mind, is Walking the Bible with Bruce Phelan. And he's so good, and it's this great PBS documentary, and some of the travel is not even possible anymore with what's going on in Syria. And so he kind of tries to map the Bible and go to these places and find them and all that kind of fun, interesting stuff. But that idea of kind of going to the Dome of the Rock and walking on the steps and kind of being in the places and what things hold, it's that part of me that I really kind of wish I'd done that, or I've done that. It'll happen when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think is kind of where I am with it. But I do, my concrete brain kind of does want to say, oh, this is Bethany.
Bethany and Studio 54, to my mind, have something in common.
Bring it together.
Roller skating, glittery men. No, that sense of having a longing to be in a place and see a place that you've heard about before. So you make this pilgrimage, if you will. You make this travel experience happen. You get there, and I almost feel like with Graham, you looked at it from the outside. It's like you got to experience it, but not quite. It wasn't exactly maybe how you thought about it in your head, but you sort of touched it. You get to touch, the Black Madonna statue at Montserrat, north of Barcelona, where I was earlier this year. But you don't get to experience, being there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, we've grazed against the travel shows.
Yeah.
I think some of why we've thought about this is, yes, it's summer, but also the death of Anthony Bourdain. And
yep.
There are people that are really encouraging us to do travel as an intentional act to challenge and alter and change ourselves.
Absolutely. I would like to leave you with two quotes from the late Anthony Bourdain. Mm-hmm. Travel changes you. As you move through this life and this world, you change things slightly, you leave marks behind, however small. And in return, life and travel leaves marks on you. Most of the time, those marks on your body or on your heart are beautiful. Often, though, they hurt. Mm-hmm. And then this one. He says, I wanted kicks, the kind of melodramatic thrills and chills I'd yearned for since childhood, the kind of adventure I'd found as a little boy in the pages of my Tintin comic books. I wanted to see the world, and I wanted the world to be just like the movies.
Right. I just want to say, Ricardo, you just country roaded me. I'm like,
choked up there.
Ricardo.
Yes.
It's not being sung by some young Croat boy on a guitar.
Years ago, I joined a show in Clayton Repertory. We showed in every little town in every single state. We hadn't any money, we were only out for glory. But every actor in the troupe knew how to catch a freight. When we left New York, we took the freight to go to Philly. The train pulled up at Newark and they caught us riding free. A brutal copper on the beat came in and beat me silly. Oh, I really must admit he made an awful tramp of me. When I got on another train, I had another battle. My back was nearly broken and my arms was full of kinks. The car that I was riding on was full of Texas cattle. They pulled me all around the car and stuck me for the drink.
Let me set it up.
Went to sleep and when I woke
Okay, now we come to the part of the show where we do our staff pick. And you know what that is. You go to the stores that don't exist anymore, like Blockbuster, and you look at the shelves. Trader Joe's has these, and you see what the staff recommends for you. And so our staff has a pick, specifically Betsy. Betsy, what is your staff pick this week?
So this summer, Ricardo, I've lived in a state of heightened paranoia. Seeking perhaps, people dropping information to me through, thumbtacks on boards and coffee houses and, trying to pass me information because I have these two shows that I hear over and over again, these recommendations. So like every summer when I'm off school, I binge one or two things. And so I really went for Homeland. Hardcore, Claire Danes, Carrie Matheson. I've developed a whole game around this show of cliches of like when Carrie's the only one with the answer, when Carrie goes off her meds, when Carrie has to get rid of her kid for a little while. And actually, in terms of like travel shows, like I find myself looking up, like where were they filming to make this look like, Caracas? Where were they filming to make this look like, all the different places? Because that's a show, the lens is really pulled back. And wherever they're filming, whether it's Berlin or whatever, is also kind of in the show and all of that. But so I've made it through and I'm caught up on that before its final season. Wow. And then I just really went for it. And now I'm watching The Americans back when, Blockbuster video stores actually existed. And Graham was standing outside Studio 54. But I love the kind of time hop of it. And you're in this, other time in this 80s saturation and like the time of my growing up, like being a kid born in the early 70s, and that whole idea, they're living among us and you don't even know it. Like all of that while trying to have a character driven show. So I'm really hopeful that I'm able to trust people, I think is my main thing at the end of the summer. Will I be able to not think everyone's a double agent? So those are my recommendations. I'm like, go for it. You can stream Americans on Amazon Prime if you have that. And then I am a Hulu subscriber. I've held tight on Hulu, and they now have a deal with Showtime. So you can watch Showtime shows like Homeland on Hulu if you're a subscriber. So there you go.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. Those shows aren't they really stressful to watch?
They are. I binged Homeland.
Homeland, there was almost a point at General Convention I had to take a break.
It's intense.
Great. Thank you. So watch but pace yourself, perhaps.
That's right. Pace.
You can find Popping Collars on the web at poppingcollarspodcast.com. You can also find us on all the social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and just about anywhere else that is now taking your privacy and selling it to other countries. Just type in Popping Collars in the search bar. That's a holdover joke from last time. And of course, you can get our podcast at all the usual podcasting apps, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, etc. Remember to show your support for our show by purchasing one of our fabulous t-shirts. Our fabulous t-shirts will make you the envy of all your friends. Just go to poppingcollarspodcast.com/t-shirts. That's poppingcollarspodcast.com/T-SHIRTS. Just in case you were wondering. Finally, you can find our show and lots of other wonderful Episcopal podcasts on episcopalcafe.com. We adore episcopalcafe.com, and we know you will as well. Check them out for all your Episcopal news needs and all the news needs you never knew you needed. And on that tongue-twisting note, this has been Popping Collars. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Liz. And thank you, Graham, for coming on the show. We will see you next time, and...
keep those collars popped.